Meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee to order. It is 1 p.m. And would you please do the roll call?
Of course, Taylor Keegan. I'm here. Brian Lindemoog.
Present.
Yemi Alimi.
Present.
Matt Stitchick.
Present online.
Steve Rebuffo.
Here.
Luke Boland.
Here.
Ben White. Present. Brad Coy.
Here.
And Russ Oswald or Melinda Colhaus.
Yeah, here.
And Bart Rudolph for Jamie Acton.
Here.
Sorry, Russ. I was like,
All right.
Melinda, no. And Craig Lyon.
I'm here for me.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Would you also please do the public involvement announcement?
Of course, AMATS committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are presented by staff and consultant. After the committee discusses the business item, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you're not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. And then I have an extra item to discuss as part of the public notice. You'll see on before each committee member is a menu of sort regarding the AMATS board committee meeting procedures. So what we wanted to do is put together this kind of cheat sheet for all the committee members so they can follow along as the meeting goes forward. So you can see kind of what the first thing we do, call to order, roll call, public involvement announcement, agenda, and then what action typically happens under each item. You know, especially under the action items, you can kind of see that we're announcing the title of the item, staff or whoever's presenting, then committee can provide comments, then the public gets through back to the committee for action. So we're hoping this helps all the committee members follow along as the meeting progresses. Thank you. And I do want to note that Taylor Keegan has joined us.
Okay. I saw her join too. We'll just call her as part of the initial roll call.
Okay.
She's been here since then. Okay, thank you, Aaron, and thank you for putting this together. It is very helpful. Now let's move on to the next one that's on it, which is the agenda. We have a motion for approving the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lyon, second by Mr. Boland. Any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing no changes. Are there any objections to approving the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Next, we have the meeting minutes from April 4th, 2024. We have a motion for approving the minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Alimi, seconded by Mr. Lindemann. Are there any changes that should be made in the minutes? Okay, are there any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the April 4th, 2024 minutes are approved. Next, we'll move to action item 5A, which is the 2023 to 2026 TIP narrative update. Aaron, I'll let you, is this here?
Yes, it is. Okay, thank you, everybody. So before you is an update to the TIP narrative. It's coming before you to help address corrective action number 1 from the 23 TMA Transportation Management Area Certification Review that we received. So this is regarding the TIP must including a description of the effects of the projects towards achieving the federal performance measures, includes an analysis and clarification of how the TPM was administered through project selection and prioritization, and how projects in the TIP will support the TPM. And then the TIP must include a description that demonstrates how projects contribute towards achieving the selected performance measures identified in the NTP and link investment priorities to those performance measures. So in order to help address this, the TIP narrative was updated to add the following. One, if you want to go to the TIP narrative itself, look under, the page, it's real quick. Page 5. Sorry, page 7. Okay, go ahead and scroll down. Okay, so under 2.6 performance management, there is a discussion. Go ahead and keep scrolling down. The first thing we have there is table 2.1, which are the 2050 NTP performance measures that were adopted, performance measures and targets that were adopted. So that nice new table that's there. So it goes through all of those performance measures so you can see what they are along with the targets. Okay, if you go ahead and scroll down to 2.6.1. Go ahead and keep scrolling. Okay, the next is 2.6.1 performance measures and tip criteria. So here is a quick description on the criteria and the performance measures for the tip and how it was done. This is for the 23 through 26 tip cycle, and is to update this every time we develop a new tip cycle. We went through each performance measure and had a really quick which performance measure it is helping to address for each criteria. So you can see safety, for example, is helping to address performance measures 2A-1 through 2A-5. And these are linked up to the performance measures in the table 2.1 above. The next thing that was added was 2.6.2, just below that, which is tip projects and performance targets analysis. Basically, what we did here is staff reviewed everything is in the tip currently as of Amendment 2 and added in which performance measure there it is helping to achieve. So you can see O'Malley Road reconstruction is helping with pavement, fatalities, serious injuries, and excessive delay. And I'm going through all there. We did also add in the transit projects and did get People Mover and the railroad to help review those to make sure that what we're showing is as updated as we can. And we're always open to making adjustments as needed. So if anyone has any, please just let us know. So these changes we hope will help to address corrective action number 1. And we won't really know until we submit it to FHWA if it helps with addressing that corrective action. So it's before you today for review and recommendation of approval to the policy committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Are there any committee questions or comments?
I have a couple minor edits, but I can wait till we come back for. Okay.
That's good. Any questions or comments from the committee? Thanks for your work on this, Aaron.
That was great.
Appreciate it. Are there any comments from the committee or from the public? Do we have anybody online? Okay, so it's back to the committee then. What is the will of the committee?
Yeah, let's see. Okay, it's after. There we go. Sorry. I move that we recommend the tip narrative policy committee for approval.
And moved by Mr. Lyon,
That's second.
second by Mr. Levy. At the time, I guess, Craig, you got
Yeah.
to edit.
So on page 3 of the document, I guess it's page 5 according to the pages on the side here. It talks about the makeup of the TAC, and it does, we're not reflecting that we don't have the energy and sustainability manager as our member anymore. We now have parks. So at the very last paragraph there. And then it says Citizens Advisory Committee and the Graphic Community, which we
Moving that up to.
okay, like see on the document here. So, and other than that, it's all the changes I saw. Sorry, I didn't notice it earlier.
Okay. So will it be best, Aaron, Mr. Lyon makes a motion to amend and please.
I move to, you already have the one, so I don't have to worry about it. So I move to reflect the change, adding the parks representative on the paragraph on page 3.
Yeah. By Mr. Lyon. Second by Mr. Lumi. Are there any objections to making an amendment? Okay, hearing none, that amendment is approved. Now on to the main motion. Or are there any other amendments that I'm doing to that? Okay, hearing no other amendments, are there any objections to approving the main motion as amended? Which is to forward this onto the policy committee for approval, with recommendation for approval. Okay, hearing no objections, that the motion as amended is approved. We are now moving on to item 5B, which is the AMATS Public Participation Plan. Is that yours, Aaron, as well?
Yeah, yes, it is. So again, and helping to address our corrective actions from the certification review, the public participation plan is coming before you for a very brief, quick edit. It's related to corrective action number 2. It says the PPP must include information about the disposition of public comments and how, where the public can gain access to public comments as part of the final MTP and TIP documents. So we made 2 changes, one on 39 and one on 40. The first is the MTP, where we just add a little, if you want to scroll on so people can see the language. Thanks. Add a quick little comment in there about MTP public comment periods include comment response summary, where all comments are received or provided a response, and then where people can find these response summaries for both the MTP and TIP. These are already in the MTP and TIP documents themselves, but the PPP needs to be updated to reflect that as well. And we're hoping this helps to address our corrective action for FHW. Again, we won't know until we submit all this and let them know that we've done this effort. So it's before you today for review and recommendation for approval to the policy committee for these changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? You go ahead, Mr. Lane.
So this is just a quick fix to work on the corrective actions. If I remember correctly, you have the intention of doing a kind of a full-blown update to this creature.
Yeah, Christine Schutte is already working on an update, or will be starting a PPP update itself, because it'll go hand in hand with our Title VI update. So that'll be a more extensive update that will happen after this. This is just to help with the corrective action number 2. As that's a more immediate need to get the TIP and STIP moving.
When might that come before us? The other
The PPP update,
2 years.
soon. It'll be quick. It's not gonna be like a few years from now, but we're working on it. So Christine just got back from time off, so we're taking it slow on everything, and we have a bunch of stuff we're working on. So we hope within the next year to bring a PPP update for you to release for the public.
Okay. Good to know just that general time frame. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you for your work on it, Christine. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Are there any comments from the public? Okay, so what is the will of the committee?
I move we recommend that this update to the PPP to the policy committee.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Lyon, second by Mr. White. To recommend for approval of the policy committee. Are there any objections to the motion? Okay, so are there any amendments? Are there any objections? If there are no objections, that motion is approved. Okay, now we're on to item 5C. The CAC Resolution on People Mover Bus Route R. Yes, this is being called 2024-01.
Yes.
Is this one yours as well, Aaron?
I'll start with it, but we do have a CAC representative here who can kind of speak on it a little bit more, since this is not coming from staff itself. Just real quick, Chuck. So the CAC met on February 27th, 2024 in a special meeting to discuss People Mover Route R, as outlined in the 2020 Transit on the Move plan. Do you happen to have that available so everybody can see? Just as a reminder, this did come before the committees in March, this resolution, I believe, but then it was tabled until People Mover, somebody from Public Transportation Department could be here to talk about this particular item. So, okay, so if you would allow Chuck Homan from the Community Advisory Committee can be here to speak on this resolution.
Okay, yeah, so happy to have him.
Chuck Holman, serve on the Community Advisory Committee as the representative from the Sugarneck Eagle River Chamber of Commerce. And I'm also president of the Eagle River Community Council. So you want to go ahead and read the resolution?
What are your thoughts, Aaron?
Maybe just kind of the final, what is the final thing that is being asked of the committee members? So then we don't have to, we have a busy schedule.
Yeah, if there's any like highlights and then.
Yeah, so Sugarneck Eagle River include the only bus service comes to downtown Eagle River, and we have a transit station there. But anybody riding that bus must make their own way to that location on Business Park Boulevard. The ridership of that bus is very minimal. So this Route R would run out to the Chugach, Eagle River Senior Center, North Birchwood Loop, and then come down Birchwood Loop and come back to Eagle River, run up towards Walmart also. And they found, that it would have the most impact of any of the community routes in Anchorage and serve the most number of people. So there's my kind of thought was the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. A lot of our scoring was based on how it improved public transportation. We have facilities, and this group, is building the infrastructure for public transportation, yet we're not utilizing it in a substantial portion of the municipality of Anchorage. So we would like to see
Oh, shit.
That's your questions. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee?
I have some comments.
Okay.
So I agree, this is a great route. I mean, it's in our plan, so we definitely support it. However, it is a lower range project for us. The department has Transit on the Move plan, which prioritizes projects based on funding availability. We've been able to implement probably 5 or 6 projects out of the plan. This is number 16. So from the department's perspective, it is not the next priority. The big question I have with a organization like AMATS and having an advisory committee to AMATS recommend a project that is not in the AMATS plan. So we just got done doing the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. In that plan, it identifies what AMATS thinks should be the next transit routes. And in it is like route on 36th Avenue. There's a route down in Independence Park. So this would be contrary to what the AMATS plan says. So how you handle an advisory committee recommending something different than what the policy committee has already amended and approved, that is confusing coming to the department. If I got this letter from the department, from an advisory committee saying, we want this route, I would go to the AMATS plan and says, well, no, AMATS wants these routes. How do we reconcile that? So this recommendation goes against what AMATS has in their plan, which is weird to me. But would be perfectly acceptable coming from a member of the community or a community council or something outside of AMATS. We get recommendations or, questions to add new routes all the time, but this is a new dynamic, so it's a little strange.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rudock. Any other questions or comments from the committee? This does, I guess, raise a question for me for the Community Advisory Committee. Was there discussion about kind of priorities? I mean, there are tons of things we'd love to do, and it really comes down to like, what next? Was there any discussion kind of along those lines?
Yeah, at the end of that, the committee, didn't want to pull any funding from any other routes that are planned and the other funding be found for this. So, the committee was not asking to divert any funds for any other routes. But we didn't identify any source of funding for it.
Okay. Thanks.
So about the funding, so a new route can be funded in a number of ways. Typically, we fund new routes through AMATS using CMAQ funding, and we can do that for 3 years. We do that as kind of like a pilot, and then after that 3 years, we ask the assembly to step in and continue funding that project. So if that was the case, then this committee would have to amend the MTP and then add money to the tip. You would have to identify which projects would come out of the tip to make that happen. The other route of funding that we typically use for a new route is from the capital or the operating budget for the municipality, which that ask would go directly to the assembly or the mayor. But if this committee is recommending a new route, you do have to you have to find money in the tip, which means you have to take a project out of the tip.
Yeah, those are all really good points. So one question that I have kind of procedurally is, as we've talked, like in our prior meetings, where there've been comments that the committees were given that then passed through our committee to the policy committee and then were passed on the project. I'm thinking of the sewer to Glen PEL, for example. Would the thing be that we would share what Bart just shared with us to the policy committee, saying, these are the different options that are before you based on what we can tell with our technical experience with regards to this request. And then we could make a recommendation of what we would suggest, or we could leave it without a recommendation, just information. Am I missing any other options? Those sound like different options of things that we could do.
Yeah, those are options. You'll notice there's no staff recommendation here. Staff did not recommend this in any way, shape, or form. We've just completed the 2015 TP update. We are completely programmed through the tip, and we would have to cut other projects that have already received priority funding. And so we can put together a package of options that are available for the policy committee to review and understand what the ask would be, especially for AMATs and the impacts. I think Bart did a really good job of putting together what the options are. It's nice hearing it from somebody other than myself. So I'm not the only one in the room who knows. And so it's really good. I can put that together for the policy committee, but in overall, staff does not recommend this course of action at this time based on the priorities that have been identified through the Transit on the Move plan. It could be something for future updates to plans to think about, but an immediate drop everything and do it now type of thing, staff doesn't recommend it.
Mr. Ryan?
Yeah, I guess I share both Bart's concern and Aaron's concern that you have two documents, the Transit on the Move document and the MTP, that have gone through an extensive public process. And during that extensive public process, this did not bubble to near the top. I mean, 16, I don't know the total number of recommendations in there, but 16th is fairly low. And as Bart said, this is not mentioned as a priority in the MTP, which we just passed. And again, we had an extensive public process on that. So that gives me heartburn to suggest otherwise here. Very hard for me to support this.
Any other?
Steve or Buffalo has his hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'm just curious, is there like some kind of a trial program that this might fit into?
That would be, so that is part of what AMATS typically does with our CMAQ funding. We're able to provide 3 years worth of funding over 5 years worth of usage. So it's basically a pilot, a trial, I don't know what you would call it, but it's basically getting it started. And then the Muni would have to come along and continue to fund it after that time period. In order to do that, we would have to have available CMAQ money. And at this time, we were fully programmed out through 2026 for CMAQ money. It could be looked at through for the next TIP update, but again, it's not in the MTP, and it's not the next priority from Public Transportation Department.
And you can't just do a pilot per se, just set it up like, we're doing like the bike lane pilot with cones and things. Every bus stop has to be ADA compliant. So you have to build all these bus stops all along this route. Even though they may have used to have bus stops, chances are they're probably not ADA compliant because they were built in the 80s. And we estimate that cost to be almost $5 million just for the infrastructure and additional buses. So you would invest $5 million into this pilot, then have to pay for the operation costs. So it's not that simple. Usually when we add a new route, we usually add it with the intention that it's going to stick around for a while, because it's a large investment.
Is it up or down? Can you scroll up really quick? So people can get, I think, Bart, correct me if I'm wrong, but this Route R thing right here,
Yep.
the dollar that's listed down there, 3.2 to 1.7 million, is that annual operating cost?
Yeah, $3.2 million operating cost if you want it to operate every half an hour. 1.7 is every 60 minutes. There's additional capital cost of almost $5 million. And this is on page 47 of the document that I'm looking at. And then there's an additional cost to our paratransit, which is anchor rides. Because this area is not currently served by paratransit, once we establish a route there, we're federally mandated to provide that service. So that's an additional $350,000 a year to operate that as well.
Sorry, I just want to make sure everybody kind of understands that this is a lot that would be asking for funding, not just a simple, okay, here's a couple $100,000, go forward.
I also will note, we currently have a bus operator shortage. We are looking at a service reduction next year or later this year. So even if somebody gives us $20 million for a new route, there's no way that we could implement any new service in the next 1 to 2 years.
Without people stepping up as operators.
Unless we can hire more bus operators, which we have not been able to do so since, we haven't had a full staff since 2020.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is all helpful information. So appreciate you bringing it forward and sharing so clearly. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee?
This is Matt Stitchick. I didn't quite understand that last point that Bart made about triggering $300,000 worth of paratransit services if this were to be implemented. But I'm curious if there's a way to combine the rideshare service to essentially collect people for the planned Eagle River route that would allow for a test of whether there's enough interest in a route through this area.
We do allow rideshare to operate in Eagle River, but it's really just for commuters. You have to all live in the same area and work in the same area, so it doesn't work. And generally for a lot of people, and this route is mainly just staying within inside Eagle River, Shukiak. However, we do recommend a micro transit zone in Eagle River. I'm trying to find it in the plan, which would probably be a better test or pilot project to fund in the future. It's towards the end of the document.
That is sort of what I was angling at, is could there be like a airport shuttle type bus that would pick people up and bring them to a route?
Yep. If you go to document page 80, I don't know what page it is in the actual number. Yeah, right there. So this is an idea that microtransit is basically like an Uber or Lyft, but done with a 20-foot bus that can hold up to like 13 people. And so we have this idea of creating a zone in Eagle River just to bring people within Eagle River and drop them off at the transit center, which, you know, is an issue for people to get there in the first place. And the idea with this is you don't have to build any bus stops. You could contract out the labor. The downside is it's all app-based, so you do weed out the population that does not have access to a phone. So there's pros and cons, but this would be something that you could look into in the next 2 to 5 years, probably.
Does this trigger the need for the paratransit, or can this also serve that role too?
We are trying to figure that out. We don't know. There's no clear guidance from FTA on microtransit zones only, so don't know yet.
Okay.
I think I would recommend to the Community Advisory Committee that they revisit other ways of achieving the same goal with a microtransit option. Since it sounds like this this resolution as proposed is not feasible.
Your thoughts on that part?
The same thing would apply. That still goes against the MTP. And if you want to fund it with CMAQ dollars, you still have to amend the MTP and take a project out of the CMAQ table.
Are there potential funds for like a pilot? Or would that still also have to be?
Well, if it's coming out of CMAQ, then it's a zero sum game. It's fiscally constrained. So
Yeah.
what comes out in order to put this in?
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the federal funds.
I'd be willing to bet that if somebody researched it, there are grant funds available for just this type of study. So
Okay, any other?
maybe if we could table it for them to research.
Well, the problem with the grant fund, besides having to write the grant, do all the other stuff with CAC Resources, is typically those grant funds, particularly on the operating side of match is relatively high, 40–50% in some cases. So you're still dealing with a fiscal constraint problem.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee?
Hi, my name's Mary Dean Broussard, and I am working with AARP on age-friendly Anchorage. And
One second. We're still looking at the committee comments. So.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said community. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No. But we are moving right now to the public comment, so I'll let you go first, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm working with AARP on age-friendly Anchorage, and we've had some conversations with the Chugiak Eagle River residents about this very thing, and that's why I was here today to learn about this. So I just want to say I've got a group of those people who are very interested in getting more actively involved. I think I might be talking primarily to the gentleman who talked about the People Mover Advisory Committee. And I wanted to get your full name and be able to reach out to you and share what I know.
Okay. So Bart Rudolph is sitting in for Jamie Acton. He does work with public transit. So.
Yeah, it's just
Okay, thank
bart.rudolph@u.gov.
Okay, great. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for joining and listening. I really appreciate you also speaking up and providing your perspective. So, and yeah, you can reach out to that part. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay, so now back to the committee. What is the will of the committee? That's not how we move forward. So this is going to be going to the policy committee.
Yeah, regardless of what you guys take action on today, it'll still go to the policy committee because everybody's advisory to the policy committee. So, my recommendation would be if you want to pass along information to the policy committee about what we've talked about today, you could provide that as an action for staff to gather that and work with Bart Rudolph to make sure we capture everything that's talked today and provide it as part of the memo for the policy committee so they have full understanding.
That's good. And then the other piece I guess I'm curious about is now all the information is great. I think for sure I would suggest needs to be part of what we propose or recommend. Or put forward a motion. The other question is, do we want to make any recommendation on top of that? Do we want to make a recommendation to select any of those options or not? So if anyone has feelings one or the other and would like to make a motion to it, we can entertain that. And I'll scrap it. There are two motion experts over here.
I just feel like this is a larger AMATS issue. Like I am not opposed to the route itself. because obviously it's in our plan. I'm just opposed to the fact that it contradicts the current AMATS plan that you guys have.
Well, that can be fixed with an ordinance. So that would have to be part of the recommendation, is if you want to do this as a, we would have to amend the MTP, and that would have to be included in whatever we provide to the policy committee, so they know the full scope of everything.
So I would probably say send it back to the CAC, see if they want to put it into the MTP, ask them what would they take out, make a recommendation to bring to this group as to how you would amend the MTP and the CMAC to fund this project. Otherwise, their recommendation really should go straight to the assembly. And that's for their funding.
I'm resisting the urge to just second that. It's a very long motion.
Yeah, sorry. That was in a comment, Rob.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll make a motion to refer this back to the CAC and have them recommend how to incorporate this into the MTP initiative, recognizing that's fiscally constrained.
Second that.
Okay, moved and seconded to. Will that include, as we forward it back to them, kind of a list of things that you had mentioned or, you know, to include it, here's what it would take, kind of like what we were thinking with the policy committee, that.
Yeah.
Part of what you're.
There you go. I can help Aaron craft it. I'll even volunteer to go with the committee and help work with them on it.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second, well, moved by Mr. Rudolph, second by Mr. Lyon, to send this back to the Citizen Advisory, or Community Advisory Committee.
So this is a recommendation to the policy committee to refer it back to the CAC. Just so you know, it's still gonna go to the policy committee, but that's your guys' recommendation. Just make sure everybody's clear on what we're doing.
Okay. Right, perfect. And so and it includes explaining what the different options are for me.
Yeah, and as we haven't gone to the CAC to get their comments on what should be removed, we won't be able to put that in any kind of memo to the CAC. Just say that's what needs to be done.
That's what I read.
So the PC knows, yeah.
So to be clear, we go to the policy committee, it would include a list of options for how to implement it. If, you know, including the potential like no implementation, with the recommendation that we refer back to the community advisory committee for them to consider those options. That sounds.
That's my understanding.
Yep.
Okay.
Aaron,
So,
can you propose options beyond just swapping out a MTP project, such as a microtransit study, or not study, but a microtransit?
Yeah, I mean, we would put that in there, but the problem is how is it funded? That's kind of the big thing that's holding everything up, is who's gonna fund it? And what we would do is talk about AMATS funding and what that would take. You know, regardless if it's microtransit or an actual route, it would still require funding. And in order to do that from AMATS, we'd have to do CMAC, which means we'd have to take something out that's currently programmed. Or, as Bart said, it could just go to the assembly and request them to put money towards it to get it started.
Could it be established as a van pool? Is there such a thing as a ADA compliant van that could run that route?
No, I mean, it still would operate as a it would be like a deviated fixed route is what we would call it, but it still needs a bus stop and it needs an ADA compliant vehicle.
Okay. Just thinking that there are probably more creative options other than just lose a project from the MTP and replace with this one. There's got to be some creative solution.
Right, and the MTP is just one option. Because this is an AMATS committee, that's why I bring it up. So it would be like AMATS recommends this project and we should fund it with our pot of money, or AMATS says, hey, this is a good idea, but not with our money. You should use other money, basically is what the recommendation should be.
Okay, I would include explore microtransit with outside funding source as an option too.
Okay, well,
I have that written down as one of the things that was talked about from the committee, yes.
sounds good. So that'll be on the list of options. All right. Okay. Are there any other discussion on the motion before us? Is there any objections to approving the motion? Okay, hearing no objections, the motion is approved. Thank you for coming again. Thank you to the Community Advisory Committee for being thoughtful and working through the system with us on this. So, the next item before us is item 5D, the AMATS Community Advisory Committee resolution on Minnesota Wall.
But we're just gonna be in the dark. Move Thank you.
Someone just had to motion to censor. One's being too
Just gonna move for a while. Yeah.
This one yours, Aaron?
Yes, Nancy Pease, are you on?
I am on the phone.
Okay, just a
Can you hear
second. Just gonna do a quick introduction and then turn it over to you. So the Community Advisory Committee met again on a different special meeting to talk about the Minnesota Wall. So this is the new HSIP project that was put in as part of the lighting project on Minnesota, and specifically between Benson and Northern Lights, the fence that was added in. The Community Advisory Committee met and discussed a resolution that was brought forward. And I'll turn it over to Nancy Pease, who is on the CAC, to talk about the resolution and kind of why it's coming before the committees. Nancy?
Thank you. We all drive Minnesota and pass through the two intersections at Benson and Northern Lights. What you might not know if you don't walk those intersections is that both of them are what I call a triple bypass intersections. So to cross east to west, you have to, in some cases, do 3 pedestrian segments and 3 lights, and it can take as much as 8 minutes. So small wonder then that some pedestrians impatiently cross directly across Northern Lights, sometimes mid-block. Cross Minnesota directly, east to west, sometimes mid-block. DOT, in an effort to improve safety there, put up lights in the median that required a podium to protect the light poles. And then they capped that off with a fence so that people wouldn't step onto the podium and that it wouldn't serve as a safety island in the middle of Minnesota. All this was done apparently was done without consultation or involvement with either of the 2 community councils, Spenard or Turnigan community councils. And both of them wrote to DOT and got similar letters back, which essentially said, we'll look at this again when we do the Minnesota Drive sidewalk repairs project, and then we'll do some more evaluation when we do a corridor plan for Minnesota Drive. Neither of those met the community council's requests for a near-term solution for what they regard as an acutely dangerous intersection, which may have more lighting, but now has a fence that somewhat obscures visibility to motorists and pedestrians, and a fence that also can serve to kind of trap pedestrians who start across without a plan to get all the way. And this is something that local residents have observed, pedestrians crossing to the fence and walking along the fence, essentially in the lane of speeding traffic to get to the end, and then popping around the end of the fence when drivers coming the other direction can't see them ahead of time. So all that said, the Community Advisory Committee chose to try to amplify the voices of the community councils in hopes that AMATS will have direct communication with DOT to expedite this remedy. They're looking for a near-term solution, commitment to a timeline, and starting now, analyze their concerns regarding the reduced situational visibility and entrapment of wayward pedestrians. And then also a clarification kind of the commitment of DOT, the commitment and process that DOT uses for non-motorized safety projects, because both of these community councils are really active, engaged community councils, and yet they weren't involved at all or they weren't notified or included at all in this design.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate you coming and sharing that recap of this resolution. Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
I guess I'd like to speak, just from, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Roller.
From DOT. One, I want to acknowledge that we could have done a better job on public involvement on this project. HSIP, usually we're trying to move fast to do data-driven safety improvements. And so we do have some other situations right now. One, we're including all the HSIP scopes within the AMATS TIP. And so hopefully that brings more awareness on some of the HSIP projects we have in process. We're not looking at doing these fences as a standard by any means. These are pretty unique situations where we don't have a lot of other alternatives. So we're looking at another situation on 5th and 6th over by Merrill Field. We're similar to this one. We're trying, lighting would be an improvement, but we can't because of the approach for the runway. And it's looking like a fence might be a situation over there that might help improve safety where we've got crash pad that we need to address in one way, shape, or form. But that project is in the early stages right now. We're going to be looking at doing public involvement to figure out what the best solution is on that and get community input on that. Definitely as a lesson learned from the situation that we had here. Also, we've got the follow-on project, well, not follow-on project, but the Minnesota Drive Pathway project is a project where we're going to be looking at that fourth leg of the crossings. It's not as easy as just putting paint down there. There's signal timing, there's traffic modeling, there's a lot of engineering that has to go into that analysis. And so we're committed to looking at that with that project here as we move forward. There are a couple of comments there as we're going forward and looking at forward what's on here to a policy.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Roller. One thing that I'll add with regards to that is the municipal traffic engineering department. As we operate those signals, we did take a look at what might be needed to be able to add that additional crossing on both the north leg of the Benson intersection and the south leg of the Northern Lights intersection. And right now, those approaches are 2 through lanes, then a through left lane with shared movement, and then a left lane. And so to make it so we can have a crossing there, because we wouldn't feel comfortable putting a pedestrian in the middle of a left turn and a through left lane, is that we would convert, we would recommend DOT was going to put that crossing in to take out the through of the second through the left lane and make it 2 left turn lanes and 2 through lanes. And so to be able to, what that would allow us to do is hold the left turns while the pedestrians cross, and then allow the left turns to go, basically protected left turn lane, left turn base. It would reduce a little bit of the time for the north-south movement, but in our analysis, it looks like there's capacity to do that. But the biggest challenge from a construction standpoint, or I guess things that you'd want to do to make that, to implement that, is how do you prevent somebody from going through now that you've taken away that through lane from the left turn? And you would need to do a sort of curb extension so that you only have 2 receiving lanes on the opposite side of the intersection. And so that's what we would envision the project to include, would be some of the retiming, different phases, having that crossing, and doing curb work to be able to stop that. And the biggest challenge that we see for that is on Benson. You kind of already have that, and then you pick up a new lane. In this case, you would pick up 2 new lanes, which kind of has some question marks of how you might accommodate that. On Northern Lights, we see that it would fit a lot better. But so we see it as being something that could be done, and we have some recommendation that if it was gonna be done, how it would be done. That we'd be happy to show DOT as we look at future projects when something like this could be implemented. So,
I think, Rick, would like to add to it. We've been in discussions with local community councils on this, and then also understand the assembly has had discussions that came up at our quarterly assembly DOT AMATS community meeting here last month. And discussions on what the assembly would be requesting in terms of the near-term solution hasn't been brought to DOT, but we're willing to entertain those discussions and keep talking about it.
thank you, Mr. Bowen. Are there any other questions or comments from the community? Go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
So I'm just curious, and maybe I didn't hear if you said this already, Luke. I don't know, maybe Anna has an answer, but the line 39 on the, I don't know, page this is where it talks about address Spring Community Council and Trinity Community Council concerns that the median fence wall has made non-motorized crossing less safe. Is that exercise, is that study, et cetera, being done to find out if it's made it less safe? I know that for me, I drive that route 10 times a week and more on the weekend if I have a home improvement project that requires 17 trips to the Home Depot. But for me, the crossing has been made a lot less stressful because I'm not seeing pedestrians rip back and forth in between there. And as someone who has hit a person on a bicycle before when I was not at fault at all, and the stress and anxiety that caused, the fact that that doesn't exist anymore because there's a fence barring that, I would like to know, I'm just interested to know if that kind of study or effort has been done already or is being done to address those concerns.
Craig, I also drive this on a regular stretch too, and I've been driving that in the winter where people, I had one gentleman run across and came around the end of the fence, and luckily came around right there where I was in a slow turning movement and I hadn't got up to speed. So I feel like there's been improvements, at least in that one instance, because I was able to stop. Talking with the engineer of record on this one, obviously our goal is to improve safety in this area. So the fence is trying to stop those mid-broad crossings where people are up at a higher speed and you have the higher potential for an accident there. We'll be looking at traffic data and crash data as we move forward on this. Unfortunately, there is a lag with that. So I don't know, there's probably other people in the room that maybe can speak to this better, but it's something we're absolutely gonna be looking at in this and making adjustments if we need to.
Excellent, thank you.
I think the comment that I'll add there is when we talk about something being more or less safe, from the technical standpoint, it is important to have it be data driven, not something that's kind of opinion based. Typically, that's a 2 to 3 year sort of process to be able to see how data indicates it. So, so just like from the technical standpoint, those are the things that I would offer from us. I wouldn't feel comfortable yet making any judgment on the safety effect of the treatment. Besides referring to what past studies might have identified or analyzed from other places. So, you know, I'm totally fine with community council making their comments and statements on that regard, but that's just so that you know where we're coming from the traffic engineering standpoint. So are there other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, are there any comments from the public? Go ahead, Anna. We'll start here in the room. Give your name and.
Anna Boson, traffic safety engineer for Central Region DOT, and I would just want to comment on one part of the resolution that talked about coordination for the future. I believe that AMATS is working right now on scheduling a work session for HSIP projects, and the very project that Luke mentioned on Fifth Avenue will be discussed there. So we are recognizing that the community is more interested in engaging on HSIP scoping and as well as project development. And so we'll be working towards that.
Thank you, Anna. Are there other comments from the public? I don't see anyone in the room. Or is there any comments from the public online? Looks like I see a hand raised by Lindsay. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Okay, thanks. Thank you all for just considering this and for lots of dialogue that has been going on between the department and the Spenard neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I guess I should say that I'm Lindsay Hyduke, and I'm just speaking as a Spenard resident who serves and with the Spenard Community Council and has raised some of these issues. So I'm glad to hear some of the comments that Luke and that Brad had about different considerations for this intersection. And I'll say, as you know, an advocate for safe, convenient pedestrian and bicyclist safety, the HSIP project is something that we just saw being built over the course of the summer. We saw, oh, lights are being put in. Oh, there's a median. Oh, wait, it's raised. And then a wall got put in. And really not the intention that I think the project had, which is to make it safer for pedestrians. Really what it functionally does is make it safer by just removing the ability for pedestrians to get where they need to go between the grocery store, the bus stop, the mall, that kind of thing. And the recommendation to put that fourth leg of the crosswalks in isn't an emotional decision. It's something that DOT actually recommends in their previous reconnaissance study. So it's already an identified need. We would have loved to see the highway safety improvement funds go towards the process to figure out and construct the intersections that we do need to make it actually accessible and safe for pedestrians, rather than just cut off and recognize that people are going to go where they need to. We would love it if the data could be analyzed sooner than the 3 years that I understand is typically used for crash data to revise any HSIP projects. And again, glad to hear that the department is really looking at how they move HSIP projects forward so that it isn't just something that takes communities by surprise. Same with the slip lanes that get installed, same with the lighting signalization change that happened at Spenard in Minnesota, but could actually have a public process where there's education and engagement so that the community can also help be informed and let others in the neighborhood know what's happening too. So I'm glad to see that there's a lot of discussion and a good hard look at this. I would recommend that we put projects forward through HSIP that actually support pedestrians rather than making it more difficult for them and not actually making other solutions in the community. So appreciate all these conversations. We'll definitely be at the table as we move forward, but just want to really, put to light that the community wants the neighborhoods to be safer too and wants to find some solutions that help us get there and want to do that together. Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective. We also have Kathy with your hand raised. So go ahead, state your name, and you also have 3 minutes to share your.
Okay, thank you so much for allowing me to speak at your meeting today. My name is Kathy Gleason. I'm president of Turnagain Community Council. And as you are well informed now, both Spenard and Turnagain passed similar resolutions once we identified that this unexpected and certainly not any way, shape, or form notified or came before either of councils with regard to that metal opaque fencing element as part of as Lindsay said, we just, lighting and a median, and had no idea that anything else was going to be part of that project last year, like third, fourth quarter of last year. It was quite a shock to see that go up. And our community council kind of focused on, in no particular order, oh my gosh, that looks terrible. Aesthetically, it's one of the, and it was unanimous at our community council when we discussed it. We thought we found it offensive and from a purely aesthetic. And I think if there is some kind of fencing identified that, DOT feels like that's justified, this was not a good choice. And our council and kind of just talked a little bit with Spenard folks as well. Maybe we could cut some holes in it, not enough for somebody to crawl through, but just to give it a less opaque and a little bit more visible through. So people could kind of see, people and drivers could kind of see through it better to see what's going on the other side. And no, Turnagain Community Council doesn't have the ability to do any kind of long-term studies, but my husband and I personally witnessed driving south on Minnesota and up at the West Northern Lights intersection, turning right into our neighborhood at night about 10 o'clock last December. We saw a pedestrian on the west side of that Jersey barrier, cement barrier. Then there's a bunch of snow, of course, last winter. Then a pedestrian walking with a car driving, probably with 1 foot to spare between their body and the vehicle, walking north toward the intersection of Northern Lights in Minnesota along that barrier. It was horrifying to see. I barely even noticed the person as we made that turn, and then I realized what I was seeing. So it's not good from a driver visibility perspective, making that left-hand turn onto northbound onto West Northern Lights. If somebody pops around, right around that, and the guy wirings, stabilizing the fencing, and then jumping across and trying to cross Minnesota there, going east. And it certainly is a scary situation for the driver. So we appreciate any further discussion near term, what we potentially could do with regard to that fence in particular, as well as, looking forward at those intersections that we think are necessary. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate you coming and sharing your perspective. And I saw some notes getting taken over here by DOT as you're talking. So thank you so much. Are there any other comments from the public? Is there anyone else online that I may be missing? Okay. So what is the will of the committee? Thoughts on how we move this one forward? So I would be happy to, similar to how Bart is helping with some coordination with Aaron on materials, I'd be happy to share what I've put together so that I can go before the policy committee with regards to kind of what I spoke to, geometry changes and things that we would see from our end. So I offered that as part of any motion that someone might want to make. Do you have other thoughts, Luke?
I'm assuming this is the case, this is going to the policy committee, no matter what we say.
Yeah,
Okay.
this resolution is a little different because it's actually asking AMATS to do something. So
That's
if you're
true.
going to the
Yeah.
policy committee, asking them to look at the four things that are up there before you. So, part of what we send could be how, or the one that makes me leery is the number 2. I don't have data to support that one way or the other, so I'm a little cautious about bringing that forward, saying supportive or whatever for it. But the other ones we can kind of talk about regarding what we've talked about today, like what projects are moving forward to help address some of these, the coordination piece that's happening, things like that.
Yeah, I have a challenge with the language that finds that the wall fence does not resolve the need for community for safe and convenient, et cetera, and is not a model for safe and balanced roadway access. So I don't know that that's true. And as Aaron said, I don't know that this has made non-motorized crossing less safe. So I have a problem with it as written. I couldn't support it as written. I guess we could amend it here, but I don't know if we want to amend what they're writing. So I just don't know that those things are true, that they could be, but I don't have any data to support that. So
can we do a different type of resolution supporting DOT study and evaluation of the wall and for improvements, future improvements, which was brought up earlier?
Yeah, you could,
In support of that.
yeah, you guys could do your own resolution if you want.
I don't know if we need a resolution as much as an motion.
Yeah.
We can make a recommendation. So we don't need to in ours, I think, like, so let's say safe or unsafe or any of those things, which could be just encouraging DOT, and we can identify which things. And I think by not saying safe or unsafe, then it makes it so that it fits more the traffic engineering side where you would like to have more of the data and your perspective going on that. So one question that I do have on this number one, is there opportunity for a project in 2024 that quickly that can start to engage and with some of these, because there's two that were mentioned, right? There was the sidewalk project and then there was a corridor study.
Yeah, so the project that had constructed this is kind of wrapping up at this point and getting closing down. So really we're kind of limited in what we could do underneath that contract. And there'd be discussions with FHWA of eligibility and again, a clear direction on exactly what is being requested. We've received a number of comments here. And so finding that path forward that we could do in the near term, I think there's still a lot of questions, I guess. Outside of that project, or with something with state funding or with M&L forces is something that could be a possibility. So all these we can discuss there. We're talking about.
Okay. So it seems like that element is, we don't, request AMATS to call upon DOT to help implement. So setting the timeline. Do you see a problem with setting a timeline?
I think it's involved. It's that discussion of what are we going to do near term and then what could be done in future projects. So, yeah, we're absolutely going to enter into those conversations. See what might be possible.
Could we just leave it at requesting us to call upon ADOT and PF level that adopted safety plans and goals? Not put by, just adopt safety plans and goals. Because in 2024, we're sitting here in May. Realistically, I don't think anything's going to happen in 2024 as far as construction on the ground. That's a pretty fast timeline to evaluate and come across. But I'm being realistic on this timeframe for construction timeframes and design and construction timeframe. And then also including a public process as well. Everything else that's not likely to happen.
I have some suggested language that I could throw out for a possible amendment. I do note that Lindsay Hyduke noted in the chat that, this number 2, where it says addresses those concerns that they have that the median fence wall has made non-motorized crossing less safe. I don't, again, as I said, I don't know whether or not that made it less safe, but those are their concerns. So, and the request is that the powers that be address those concerns. So that's I think I can see that makes sense to leave it in as it's written because those are their concerns.
To acknowledge
I don't have any data to prove one way or the other, but those are their concerns. So I guess in that case, I would leave that alone, but I think, and I'm just I'll say what I think we could change the language to that would make me more comfortable, and then I guess we can talk about it and I can make a motion on it. But if we said something like the CAC has concerns that the current median wall fence may not resolve the community need for safe and convenient non-motorized crossing, et cetera, and then after Benson Boulevard's put, and may not be a model for safe and balanced roadway access, I would feel more comfortable with that because I don't know if those things are true, but it may be. So I think it softens it a little bit, but it still lays out the request for the a safety project. I mean, Luke has a better idea on when something like that might be able to happen with some other form, and then leave the rest of them at it as is. I would feel more comfortable with that.
All right. Add on to kind of what you're saying and listening to all this. From my perspective, we've got a pedestrian problem there. I mean, the reality is, if people would use the pedestrian facilities that are provided, the fence would not be a problem. The fence is up. That's an issue. So, and you know, some of the anecdotal things about people walking down the road in the middle of the night in the snow, that happened everywhere. And I'm sure the facilities there, just by the snow and everything else, probably didn't help. I think the issue, to Mr. Coy's point, is there's an issue with pedestrians in that whole area that probably did not get solved by this. Pedestrians are really good at ignoring what they're supposed to be doing and doing the most expedient thing at the time, which is probably run back and forth across the middle of that. DOT was trying, well, DOT tried to solve it by making it so they couldn't do it, but it didn't make the existing facilities any more attractive to use. And so I think if we're gonna recognize anything, I think we need to zoom out a little bit and look at the pedestrian issues in that whole block. And through that process, maybe there's a better answer than the fence there that everyone takes issue with. Everyone's focused on the fence, but the fence is the symptom. It's not the problem. The problem is the pedestrian traffic in that entire area clearly doesn't have what it needs for people to want to use it.
So kind of related to that, do we think that having the addition of the crossing, let's say we leave the fence and we have crossings on those two legs that don't have it, is that
I don't think we're not gonna be able to come up with the right solution sitting around this table. I think what needs to happen is DOT needs to re-engage with the community, go there, look at it with whether that's their own traffic safety folks or somebody that, and look at what's going on and try to come up with a solution that works for everybody. We can sit there and say, take down the wall, take down the fence, whatever you want to do it. People are still gonna run back and forth. People are still gonna get run over, so they're running back and forth, but that's not the problem. Problem is tertiarily at those intersections, people don't want to cross there for some reason. Whether it's they can only cross on one side, you know, get from one side to the other, you gotta go all the way around through three different lights, or whether it's something else. I don't know, I can only guess. But it seems to me you probably sit at the city diner and sip a milkshake for an hour and just watch and come up with some ideas.
So just as a quick reminder, we're not looking at editing the resolution from the CAC. It'll go forward as is in all its glory. And so if you guys do have recommended language change, that would just come forward as a recommendation from the technical advisory committee. The resolution's kind of been approved, so that's CAC. And Steve Buffalo has his hands up, Brad.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
go ahead.
just a quick comment, because I drive that way twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon going home. You know, my wife tells me all my taste is in my mouth anyway, so I don't find the wall off-putting. But my concern is that if we do something that is considered a corrective action, that it begins to, enable bad behavior again. And I don't think anybody wants to see that. And I think it was mentioned that, both the intersections on Benson and Northern Lights have 3 crosswalks when they could have 4. And or maybe they can't have 4, and I'm just not savvy enough to understand why they can't have 4. But you would like to think that that is close enough to where people would want to cross the street to help. And that's a pretty low cost solution. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Buckman.
Can I start forming a motion?
Sure.
This is Taylor. Hello, everyone. I would like to motion for, I guess, to encourage DOT to coordinate with the community on the needs in this area, and to update, I guess, the technical advisory group as needed.
You've got, I see you're on typing. Let's see if he's got that down.
Encourage DOT to coordinate with the communities in this area and update the TAC as needed.
Okay, so we've got a motion. Do you have a second?
I'll second this primarily so I can add author.
Okay, seconded by
Great, thank you.
Mr. It sounds like we've got some friendly amendment language now.
Well, and basically add to it to take a more holistic look at what the problem is there and try to come up with a solution to the problems people still want to cross Midge Lot, right? That seems to be the biggest problem, or wherever they don't want to use the pedestrian facilities, they're there. DOT needs to sort of zoom out, look at that entire area and say, why aren't they using them? And then come back with some solutions for that. Not just, instead of a gray fence, we want a yellow fence, or we want a fence with bigger holes in it, or we want a bigger fence, shorter fence, no fence. The fence isn't the problem.
Okay, so did you, dial that down?
Take a more holistic look at the problem in the area and come back with some solutions.
Yeah.
So how does it currently read?
Encourage DOT and PF to coordinate with the communities in this area, update the TAC as needed, and take a more holistic look at the problems in the area and come back with some solutions.
Okay, so are you okay with that language, Taylor, as a friendly amendment to your motion?
Yeah, that's a welcomed addition. Thank you.
Are there other thoughts on any amendments to the motion? One thing you spoke about is that we do have upcoming projects. DOT does have upcoming projects in that area. Is there anything in that motion that getting that updated with, like, dovetail with those and facilitate kind of?
I think that covers it. I think, we do have, we're looking at that 4th crossing in the Minnesota Pathway Project, the corridor study on Minnesota and Benson. There's always projects in the Anchorage area. So I think how we have the motion now gives us good stuff we're already, I think, there's been a discussion.
From an urgency standpoint, is there any language that makes sense to add?
I think the engagement with the community, I think there's plenty of urgency with the community on this. So I think that engagement piece will lead to, what can be done now and not going to discuss.
Aaron,
Okay,
I didn't hear this proposed in the amendment, but do we have in there that the cooperation between the Citizen Advisory Committee and DOT reviewing this situation also propose a solution and then bring that to the TAC. I didn't hear the propose a solution as part of the amendment.
Let's have Aaron reread what we have in the motion right now.
Yeah, so the motion from the TAC is encourage DOT to coordinate with the communities in this area, update the TAC as needed, and take a more holistic look at the problems in the area and come back with some solutions.
Okay.
I think that hits the points that you were mentioning, just a bit, but if there's something that you think needs to be added to that, welcome any suggested amendments. Okay, any other thoughts on the motion? Okay, is there any, are there any objections to approving the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved. So thank you, Luke, for the DOT's willingness to look at that, and thank you, Community Advisory Committee, for your perspective and sharing it too, on everyone's contributions on that. Okay, and thank you, Taylor, for venturing into making that motion.
Very
Okay,
brave.
so now we are moving on to the next item on our agenda, which are the project and plan updates. We'll start with project update 6A, protected bike lane pilot project presentation.
Okay, we'll have the project team who are here. If you guys can introduce yourself, go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Myself here. My name is Colin Singleton. I'm the CRW engineering group leading the consultant team. And I'd like to introduce
Zach Hartman with the Municipality of Anchorage Traffic Engineering Department.
And Anna Boson, Central Region Traffic and Safety Engineer.
And we're here to give you our second update on Anchorage Protected Bike Lane pilot study. That's a mouthful, so I'll go through a couple of terms here with this next slide. What's a protected bike lane? So a protected bike lane is a designated on-street bikeway separated from traffic by a vertical component such as a barrier, curb, or flex post. As you can see, this is in a temporary installation where we have simply flex posts separating the bike lane from the adjacent travel lane. This was on our phase one on Pine Street and Cary Street. And then our next slide for the pilot aspect of the project. Pilot. So the pilot really allows us to look at things in a cost-effective manner, to use the flexibility in terms of timeliness and using different materials, learn about different materials that work in different instances, learn about the capabilities, the maintenance requirements. We just are coming from a meeting today talking about what type of sweeping would be necessary and how we can make adjustments to equipment to accommodate it. So there's been a lot of collaboration, all within a very short time frame. So that's the purpose of the pilot. Really, where the underlying question is, how can protected bike lanes be implemented throughout Anchorage? And how would they be maintained, and how would they be seen to affect bike ridership throughout the city? So that's the underlying questions we have. As you can see, this is the municipal paint and sign crew putting in those same flex posts on the Pine to Cary phase one back from September 2023. I'm going to hand it off to Anna here on this next slide to talk about our team and the collaboration between the DOT and everyone else.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. So this project is in its second year. We kicked this off in phase one with the start of the research project that was really a partnership and a community-led demonstration by the city of Anchorage. Reached out to the DOT after the bipartisan infrastructure law was passed that allowed some more flexibility in the funding application. And this was funded through the research program at DOT. And we met with both city leaders and community members, the Bike Anchorage group and Assembly Member Boland, to look at how to move the needle on some goals for both active transportation and safety. And so there has been national research that was conducted recently that showed that protected bike lanes actually improve the safety of all users of a corridor, not just bicyclists. So it has a calming effect on the traffic flow through the area. It improves the comfort for non-motorized users. It expands the access to more ages and abilities through a corridor. It allows for that separation of users. So it has many benefits, but we wanted to see if that was really the case here in Alaska. So research is a great opportunity to explore where some things might have worked in other locations, but to confirm that that is the case here in Alaska. And so this first phase was a success in my mind, and in regards to learning, like Colin said, what are the constraints from our different agencies' perspectives? How can we overcome those constraints and concerns? How do we work with materials? How do we engage with the community? What type of implementation works in different corridors? And we had some success with data collection as well to prove that in the phase one. And so I'll hand it back over. Is there another slide?
Can we go to that previous slide with the photo?
Oh yeah, sorry. So in this photo, you'll see these are many stakeholders and community leaders here at the ribbon cutting for the Pine and McCary Street. This was the very first pilot protected or a protected bike lane in Anchorage, and potentially statewide. And so here we have the mayor, and of course Brad, and then you see Assemblymember Voland and Bike Anchorage, and our consultant team holding the ribbon for us. And then in the background there, you'll see some state legislators there as well. And then, of course, community members participating in the ribbon cutting ceremony. So it was a great show that DOT can work with the community, can be responsive to the goals and vision needed to meet a community's needs.
The one thing I just want to highlight, some people that are not shown in the photo, but who are worthy of a shout out are all the municipal and state department staff who helped make this possible, from coordinating with materials and installing, from reviewing plans that all made it possible in a very short time. So next slide, I'll talk about kind of that time frame and our purpose for presenting today. So the phase one, as you can see, we kicked off in the end of June and we're able to install the pilot by September. That was installed for the month of September. We collected pre and during data on speeds, vehicle volumes, and bike volumes, as well as surveys of cyclists before and after to gauge their perception of protected bike lanes. That will go into a final report. From that, we're moving into this phase two project, which is along 6th and A. I just want to highlight how much public involvement we've been trying to bake into this project, as well as now presenting to you. So the project has gone for community councils, gone to the transportation fair. We're having a pop-up event here on the 11th, and then we are going to be installing the project between the 15th of May and 30th of May. So now I'll kick into what we're doing there. That's really the main purpose of our presentation today, is to alert you and hold on. So if I could show that next slide. So this is a graphic showing the phase 2 summer 2024 downtown Pavement pilot on 6th and A Street. What this would entail is closing of a lane of travel, the north lane of 6th Avenue and the west lane of A Street, both the left lanes in the direction of vehicle travel, and converting that into two-way protected bike lanes. There'd be some connectivity to the coastal trail by Coastal Place and 5th Avenue, some minor turn lane modifications on L Street, I Street, and potentially C Street. But what would it look like? We can go to that next slide. What that would look like is, as shown here, taking one of the 3 vehicle lanes and converting that into a two-way protected bike lane with temporary markings, temporary dividers, which would be the similar plastic flex posts and rubber curbs, as well as some new types of materials. We have pursued incorporating concrete or metal barriers for higher speed portions of the corridor. That's not able to be incorporated. And you can see that two-way bike travel in the lane that shows the West 6th Avenue marking in the photo below. So why 6th and A? I know that's an important question. We wanted to bring in DOT right away and DOT management. We wanted to shift from looking at residential street to a higher speed streets where protected bike lanes are actually necessary. Many people ask, why aren't we looking at lower speed streets? And for many of them, a protected bike lane is not what's called for. The other main thing that led us to 6th and A is what's feasible. In order to do a temporary project, we can't make any modifications to the existing striping. We had to find a route where we could take what available lane width and use transform that completely into a protected bike lane. So some smaller roads made that not feasible. We can move to the next slide. And here's how to get involved. We're having another public outreach event on the 11th before anything is installed, as well as a ribbon cutting event scheduled for the 30th of May. Both are at Town Square Park, and the details are there and on our website. As I mentioned, the route will be in place sometime between the 15th of May and mid-September. It'll be removed by the 30th for sure of September. The public and agency staff can look at, view our website to find more information. There's spaces to comment, as well as share specific location related insights on an interactive map, view the design in completion. There's Brad and Anna's contact info as well.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the committee?
Hey, Brad. Yeah, thanks. Is there something, either this presentation or something a little more concise that I could use to pass along to the port users, to pass along to the trucking companies, just to make sure they're aware that there's going to be, at least on a temporary basis, a lane closure on 6th Avenue. So they're not surprised by that.
I can respond to that.
You're right, Paul.
So yes, we have actually reached out to a number of trucking companies specifically and more broadly through the Alaska Trucking Association. And we're putting together a driver's notice showing those lane closures and turn paths that we're planning to circulate through the Alaska Trucking Association. So that is in the works, and I appreciate that insight.
Oh, sure. And if there's anything that is going to get distributed municipality wise to announce when this comes, if the directors get it, then I will just send on to the tenants down here at the port, what what you're going to send to everybody else. You would be surprised how many times you think the word got out, but the word didn't get out. So I'm happy to help with that.
Okay, thanks, Steve, appreciate it. We'll make sure that that information that the project team puts together gets to you. To forward on to the companies. So let's see, any other questions or comments from the committee? The one thing that I'll add is it's been a pleasure to be part of this project. I'm excited to see how it turns out. It's been a great opportunity to collaborate with DOT and municipality. It's been a great partnership that I've really enjoyed. So I'm glad I get to be part of that with Luke. I know we've had discussions with Sean Holland and Kent Colhayes, municipality, and then all the team that's involved. It's been a really good opportunity. So as a cyclist, I'm really interested and excited to ride it. As a traffic engineer, I'm really excited to see the calming effects that it has for downtown for all users. I mean, been a pedestrian there the other day, walking along there. It's just really scary to be on some of those sidewalks adjacent to heavy trucks barreling through there. It felt like at high speeds. So I'm really excited to see all those different pieces and what the data shows, how this affects things. And I recognize the major question is still yet to be determined. Not sure how we address that, but yeah, this is the first step to figure some of those things out.
And I'd say it's been a pleasure as well, and really appreciate everybody's hard work on this. I'm really excited to see it in place, see how everything goes this summer. Excited to ride it as well.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Taylor Keegan has her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Taylor.
I just want to echo what you said, Brad. I work downtown and I'm really excited to use this connection. I use A Street to get to downtown from the Chester Creek Trail because you don't have to wait at a light at 15th, and it is the most accommodating grade. I'll just say that for anyone who's gone up the Valley of the Moon Hill. But yeah, I'm really excited to see this project and just want to echo all the things you said about the positive impacts to downtown and traffic calming. I more than once have seen my life flash before my eyes as a semi comes barreling awful close to that curb. So yeah, thanks for everyone who did this project. And I'm sure I'm not the only one at City Hall that feels that way. So thanks.
Thanks, Taylor. Okay, let's see. Are there any comments from the public? You go ahead, state your name.
My name's Wayne Still, and I just want to say that, yeah, more active transportation routes, especially with year-round cloud considerations, would be good. That's one of the big problems with the Moose Loop is that in the wintertime that becomes a ski trail, and even without that bike, it can be challenging. And so people that don't have access to that type of bicycle really struggle. And so it can be a potential cloud winter routes that people can encourage people to utilize their bicycles. So it's important because winter's long here. I want to just do 4-month-long projects.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for your comments. Appreciate it. Other public comments? Is there anyone online? Okay. Perfect. Well, thanks so much for coming and presenting. I really appreciate getting that update here. The next item then on our agenda is the pavement replacement project discussion, item 6B. Is that yours?
That'd be me. And we don't have a lot of time left, so I'll be quick on this one. So part of this discussion comes up because two reasons. One, we're about to start a new tip cycle in about a year or so, and two, Meg Zolotel had asked an item be put on the agenda for the policy committee regarding design starts for pavement replacement projects. So pavement replacement projects right now are typically small dollar, quick shave and pave type of projects. So that's how they have been in the past. Recently, pavement replacement projects have become more and more high dollar, taking a little bit longer to get done because there are so many needs in the community that have not been addressed and are trying to be addressed as part of these pavements. So for example, lighting, signals, drainage, electrical replacement, all that kind of stuff. We often go into these roads and find that there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And well, we're the ones kind of doing it. In addition, there are requests from the community to do things like protected bike lanes or, different pavement markings, that kind of stuff on the roads. So the cost of our pavement replacement projects have gone up pretty significantly with the last few that have come forward. Typically, they would range in like the $5 million range. Some of them are starting to go up to 7 million. Some of them are going to be significantly higher than that. So I wanted to have a discussion with the committees about moving forward for pavement replacement, because what we've been doing is pulling the projects out of the pot of funding or the table 6 list of projects that we have in there, and then putting them in the tip as a single line item project when they reach a certain threshold of about 7 million or more, is typically when we pull them out. So I kind of want to get the committee's opinion. Should we keep moving forward as is and have this kind of just pot of pavement projects that we select in coordination with DOT and the municipality of Anchorage, maintenance folks, recognizing that we need to ensure we include Parks and Rec more, which we're now doing, and then also transit. We need to include them more in our discussions about the priorities of pavement. And then just pull out the big ones when they hit, or recognize that almost all of our pavement projects are now going to start becoming these big, higher dollar and move away from this single pot and just from the get-go, call them as individual projects out in the tip. So they're scored and ranked like everything else, and people see from the very beginning what projects we're anticipating on moving forward with and when. Right now, it's a little harder for the public and the committees to find, hey, what are we underway with our pavement projects right now? It takes a little more effort to be able to see that. Whereas if we call them out as individual projects, you could see that a little bit more. The benefit to keeping the pot of money, the benefit and then disbenefit, I'll talk about those. The benefit to keeping it as a pot of money is typically a lot easier for us to be flexible when projects slip. So in this tip amendment, we had a couple of pretty high dollar active transportation projects slipped, and we needed to use the pavement program to, find that gap of money. The downside is it's harder for people to see kind of what happens with those projects when we make those shifts. In addition, if we don't have design starts ready to go, we have nothing to be able to absorb the funding, which is part of what Meg Zolota wanted to talk about is there a way for us to start getting some design starts ready to go and there on the shelf? So if a project slips and it frees up funding for us, that we can just plug that project in to keep things moving. So hopefully that was clear, kind of what I was talking about, but I'd like to just see if I can get some thoughts from you all about what we as staff should be looking at as we move into our next tip development sites. Thank you.
Aaron, Matt
Absolutely.
Stichik here. I have a
ahead, Matt.
recommendation that you try to create a threshold for visibility when a project is getting sufficiently large that it's going to influence that pot, like say a $5 million threshold or maybe even lower. And at that point, send it to the engineering department to propose a design for that segment to be rehabilitated and be pulled out of the pavement replacement pot as a separate project. So try to give yourself some advance warning by setting a lower threshold at which it becomes designed as a separate project.
It's kind of what we have now is we've already kind of set that threshold to staff and we have it about 7 million or so. There's nothing in policy and procedure about that. And it's just kind of what we've noticed is the trend for project costs. So we already do have that, but that could be something we could enshrine a little more in policy and procedure if there's a desire for that.
But if we're finding that so many projects are hitting that threshold late in the process, then maybe we need to lower the threshold or, some try to carve that out a little bit sooner.
Okay, Mr. Lindenwood?
Aaron, do you know if the concern was just how expensive these projects are becoming, or was the concern the transparency of the public being able to see where their street is on the list, so to speak?
Both.
Both.
Both. It's a recognition that the cost is going up. And I think when we develop the tip cycles going forward, we need to kind of recognize that because there are thresholds that are in policy and procedure right now of how much is going towards pavement replacement. And fewer and fewer projects are being done in a 4-year time period because things are getting so much more expensive, because we're adding so much more to these projects to get done.
I think one thing I'll add to that is this idea of safety audits. So a pavement project, as we come and look at it, what are the safety enhancements that are needed? Like, for example, INL, putting in a lane that doesn't have a crossing. Is that something that the project can do? And what are the different pieces that that needs for the signal, just as an example? And so some of these things come up, or can we like reallocate some of the roadway space? And like if we start to do more protected bike lanes or reallocate some of it, does a pavement preservation project allow for the safety improvements? And I think it feels untenable from my perspective to do the project and not identify what safety improvements are needed and do them to the extent that we can as part of it. Because to come in and to repave and to not do any of those known safety improvements, it just feels like a lost opportunity, and then it creates issues. And so having it, but those do add costs onto it. And it might be a reason why it gets triggered, and then it goes from being a quick, easy pavement shave to a more extensive project that kind of caught off guard.
Well, I would consider one a pavement maintenance repair, while the other one is more of a rehabilitation or refresh of the roadway corridor. That inaccurate?
But I think that's kind of the problem we're seeing right now is the pavement preservation costs, usually these are fast moving projects where we're just repairing the surface. But as you're going through there, if you got a culvert that's failing, you don't want to come back a couple years later, rip that thing out and then patch it in brand new pavement. So that's what we'll do it right now. Safety concerns, we're going to address those when we're in an area because we don't know when we're going to be back there. But that scope creep that starts adding on can drive utility agreements, it can drive right-of-way needs. These projects can move real fast. So it's a challenge with, what Aaron's trying to deal with right now. I think there's always should be a place within our funding that we can, take care of these pavement needs as they pop up. We don't know what might happen in any one given area. We might have a huge pothole with a shooting on one stripe of road. We gotta start jumping on that as fast as we can. Or these projects make great fillers if, like you said, a big project slips and moves to the next year. But there has to be some guidelines and some bumpers on how much we can add to a pavement preservation project. And I don't know the right answer because all the things that we're talking about right now may not come back to that corridor for another 10, 20 years.
Well, but that's kind of my point, though, is that there's almost two different things here. You've got the ones where I think you can go out and make an assessment and there's really not a lot of other issues other than the pavement that falls in it. And I see that as one pot of money versus these more, okay, this road was last touched 35 years ago. We put asphalt on it 6 times in those 35 years. Pipes are bad, utilities are bad, the curbing is bad, and this is more of a complete refresh versus just. And is there a way that you can sort of divide those two pots? So, because I would think the ones that are just straight shave and fade without all the other issues would go a lot faster.
I think a lot of times we start a project with the idea that it's a easy shave and fade, and then we get a ton of suggestions, or we go out there and we do the detailed analysis on a lot of stuff just comes to the surface. And so it's like Aaron's talked about that threshold. When does it stop being a big project and jump into a named project?
Yeah, we used to do one or two pavement replacement projects in the tip, in the life cycle of a tip. 15 some odd years ago, DOT said we've got $75 million worth of back needs in pavement replacement only. And so then we created in the tip a fund, a pot just for pavement replacement. And obviously, as Luke has mentioned and knows all too well, that scope creep occurs, and if, you know, what looked like it was going to be a $2 million shave and pave is now a $7 million project, because you got to do this and you got to check this. And those are the ones that should come out and come into their own projects. But maybe we've outlived the usefulness of having a separate pot of money or a separate table for just pay replacement, because none of them seem to be just that anymore.
And it may be that we do away with the pot and then just put in those pavement projects with their specific amount per year and just have them in there like every other project so everybody can see them. And then we just treat them like everything else. And it just makes it easier for staff and the public and the committee members to kind of follow along what's happening and what's moving forward. That's kind of the real thing I'm struggling with right now, is it's not as transparent as I think it should be for the process.
Do we have a sense for what roads are gonna need pavement replacement coming up?
Well, I think it's always an ongoing discussion. We're talking about it with the state funding that we use to do the PM work on our side. So I think it's a regular.
So if we had projects that were getting designed with the recognition that they are kind of our go-to shovel and, you know, that I've already incorporated the safety into, then, you know, moving from a lot earlier with that design element.
Well, I guess it's that discussion too of when does it cross from just pavement preservation into the larger project, and what does that look like if that the discussion here at AMATS, soon it will be, or is it just scoring it and we do it through a tip amendment?
Yeah, that's kind of part of the direction I need to go, because if we're gonna pull them out as individual projects, we would score and rank them like everything else, but then do we have a separate scoring and ranking for pavement only projects? I would assume so.
Yeah.
Because they typically are doing different
They're not
things.
gonna score well in a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know, to the transit discussion earlier, it sounds like transit already has a list, right? Because Eagle River thing is like number 16 and you're at number 4. We've got a list of all the pavement projects. I would think that we could probably list them. Now, you always run into a problem of, oh, here's $4 million and the next 30 things on the list are $9 million. And down buried somewhere, there's a $4 million project, and how do you bring that, jump that forward? But I think that's something we can handle administratively.
Yeah, we already have a list of projects, and that's the table 6, where it lists the pavement projects for motorized users and then the pavement projects for active transportation users. And what we're finding is that the active transportation user list especially is becoming a lot more expensive than typical projects that go into that fund. And so it's how do we move forward with these projects?
I think if I look at a lot of the facilities that were designed for active transportation even 20 years ago, which are now coming due, versus what the expectation is for us to deliver today, they almost don't even look the same, right? And so that's a lot of it.
Okay, sorry, I didn't want to take too much time.
Do you have enough information to move forward? This doesn't have an action item on it. so-
Yeah, it's no action item, and I think it's just gonna be, I'm gonna take kind of what I heard here and just put it into a little memo for the policy committee to just have it be part of the discussion. I'm not looking for an action even from the PC. Of course, they are obviously able to give me an action, but it's just looking for guidance as we move into the next tip update, what to be looking for, what to be bringing forward to the committees. So, and I think we may need to move away from our typical pavement preservation pot of funding and have them be individually called out projects. And I need to kind of flesh out what that would look like and what that would take for us to do. There is a benefit to having the pavement projects in a pot, but recognizing that we're moving in a new direction where these projects are no longer just a quick move on, that we have a lot more needs that need to be addressed on a regular basis. I think we need to kind of go forward with that.
Yeah. I think there are other planned studies in the works, like the roadway management snow and ice study, which is gonna look at things like where we put snow. And so, and I know that there's one of the thoughts would be, can we narrow lanes? Do we need to repave 5-lane section where we only could get away with a 3-lane section and turn the outer lane into a snow storage so that it cuts down on maintenance, cuts down on pavement replacement. So I think having projects laid out so that that can be figured out ahead of time is really valuable. Okay, so it looks like we have 5 minutes. And we'll move on to committee comments. I guess if we get too close, we could see about extending a couple minutes, but maybe we can get it through in 5 minutes. Are there any committee comments?
I have 2 items on pre-agenda, so my comment is, I gotta go.
Okay, sorry. That's all right.
I gotta get to that.
That's good. Okay, thanks, Russ. Other committee comments? Are there any public comments?
Like Catherine Keith has a public comment.
Okay, state your name. You have 3 minutes, Catherine.
Great. Hi, everyone. Catherine Keith and Deputy Commissioner DOT. Yeah, thanks for the great conversation. I enjoy listening in, and I wanted to offer an update just on our statewide transportation improvement program. We met with Federal Highways a couple days ago, and we went through our process for what we hope to accomplish with our policies and procedures as we move forward to resolving our Tier 2 findings and getting our next STIP amendment out for public comment on by June 1st. So just offering that update, and we're happy to provide information as we go through that process. And, you know, we're working as hard as we can so we can get your TIP amendment that has been approved by AMATS into Federal Highways. So anyone needs more information, please reach out. But just for awareness purposes, our staff are working full on STIP mode so that we can make that possible. So let us know how we can provide information, and that's what we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Keith. We appreciate you coming and giving that update. Any other public comments?
I do have one public comment, or I should say just comment from staff in general, and since we don't fit under the committee ones, I'll do it here. Because staff is going to become very short-handed here shortly, I just wanted to kind of let everybody know that we unfortunately will be having to put some things that we regularly do on hold until we can get more staff online, and that is the subcommittees, the CAC, BPAC, and FAC. Right now, we are so short-staffed that we're having a hard time keeping those committees moving forward in a timely manner. So for the foreseeable future, we will have to pause any meetings with the CAC, BPAC, and FAC until staff can be refilled. We have kind of our priority things that we need to get done on a regular basis to make sure we meet federal regulations. We still will have the CAC meeting when needed for to meet our federal requirements as we have outlined in our public participation plan. But we'll send out an email to the subcommittees and the CAC and PC and let them know that hopefully it won't impact too many meetings with those groups. I know this is not the best news to hear, but we are stretched very thin right now, and we need to do what we can to keep the program moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. And anyone who's interested in coming and stepping up into one of the how many, 3 vacant?
We do have 3 vacant positions out of 5. So.
Okay, are there any other comments from let's see. We got 2 minutes or 1 minute. Do I see a hand raised?
Yeah, it looks like Matt.
Yeah.
Did you have something?
Just one more comment back on the pot of money for pavement replacement. Just if you recall what happened with the expiring PPP money, the COVID-related stimulus, you know, you had a whole bunch of monies expiring all at once, and it was really convenient to have that that funding category of the pavement replacement to drop that into temporarily until other projects could be spun up. So I wouldn't want to lose that pavement replacement entirely. That's very useful as a slush fund, or not slush fund, but I mean a place where expiring money can quickly go to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Stitchick. Okay, it looks like we are wrapping up. So with that, it is pretty much 3 o'clock and we're adjourned.